Want to see a movie that makes death look nice? Definitely watch 2014's Tusk. Kevin Smith's Tusk is a polarizing descent into madness, grotesque transformation, and a horror comedy that blurs the lines between absurdity and profound existential dread. I'm not exaggerating. Based on a concept born from Smith's SM Oddcast podcast, this independent body horror film introduces a chilling exploration of humanity's fragility, the destructive force of obsession, and the distorted lengths to which power and guilt can drive a person. Starring Justin Long, Michael Parks, Haley Joel Osment, Genesis Rodriguez, and Johnny Depp, Tusk marks the first entry in Smith's True North trilogy. The film begins innocuously with Wallace Brighton, a cocky, unlikable podcaster who thrives on ridiculing the eccentric and unfortunate for his audience. Alongside his co-host, Teddy Kraft, Wallace runs a show called The Not Sea Party, where sensationalism clearly takes precedence over empathy. Wallace's moral descent mirrors the dreadful transformation that awaits him, as opportunism leads him deep into the Canadian wilderness, where he meets Howard Howe, a reclusive, strange man with a haunting tale of survival at sea. Howard explains he was rescued by a walrus, his beloved Mr. Tusk, as he named him. His story initially seems like the harmless ramblings of an old sailor, but the encounter swiftly turns completely sinister. Wallace is drugged, and when he awakens, he finds himself trapped in Howard's isolated mansion. His nightmare unfolds as Howard begins a gruesome surgical metamorphosis, mutilating Wallace's body and stripping him of his humanity to create a real-life homage to Mr. Tusk. In other words, surgically transforming him into his own pet walrus. Howard's backstory, steeped in pain and tragedy, reveals the roots of his depravity. As a Duplessis orphan, Howard endured years of unspeakable abuse, fueling his hatred for humanity and obsession with recreating the innocence and purity he associated with the walrus that once saved him, which is kind of sweet, I guess. In a morbid attempt to atone for killing and eating Mr. Tusk to survive, Howard has spent decades resurrecting the creature by mutilating his other victims into monstrous walrus hybrids. I think some therapy would probably do him some good. Meanwhile, Wallace's girlfriend Allie and his podcasting partner Teddy embark on a desperate search to find him after receiving his voicemails crying for help, which honestly I didn't think they would get because they're kind of terrible people. Their journey brings them to Guy Lapointe, a weird detective obsessed with capturing Howard, whom he dubs the first wife due to the killer's penchant for creating absurd human partners. Lapointe's involvement introduces a surreal and darkly comedic tone that offsets the visceral horror of Wallace's transformation, which is a nice touch to the movie, I guess. I mean, it didn't make the movie any less unbearable. But anyway, the climax of this film is both horrifying and tragic and actually made me sad. Now fully transformed into a walrus, complete with tusks made from his own bones and his humanity stripped away, Wallace is forced into a savage, primal showdown with Howard, who has created his own walrus suit to fulfill his perverted fantasy of becoming Mr. Tusk's adversary. The battle ends with Wallace impaling Howard on his tusks, granting the deranged man a final sense of satisfaction in completing his life's mission. You would think Wallace is now going to be saved and rejoin society, work on getting over his traumatic experience, maybe get a positive 5 years later timeline jump. But Tusk doesn't allow its audience the comfort of resolution. A year later, Wallace is left to exist as a walrus in a wildlife sanctuary, fed fish by his friends Allie and Teddy, who are racked with guilt and horror at the fate of their once vibrant friend. I interpreted this as Allie and Teddy realizing that Wallace's humanity was in fact completely gone, since they did witness the aftermath of Wallace brutally impaling Howard and the scrunching walrus noises he made, since he was unable to speak due to the surgeries Howard had done on him, to of course make him fully embody a walrus. It was so sad because we as an audience want Wallace to be saved, and he literally was, like his friends found him, suggesting that the worst part was over, but we can see that in their eyes he was already gone. In a heartbreaking moment, Wallace sheds a tear, recalling Allie's earlier words that crying is what separates humans from animals. This moment blurs the lines between man and beast, leaving the audience to question the nature of humanity and the cost of survival in a world where identity can be so easily stripped away without even realizing it or being able to stop it. Beneath its grotesque exterior, Tusk is a meditation on the fragility of identity, the horrors of losing control over one's own body, and the destructive power of guilt and obsession. Kevin Smith weaves these themes into a darkly comedic yet deeply unsettling narrative that lingers long after the credits roll. While its mix of tones has divided critics, Tusk has gained a cult status among audiences drawn to its bizarre, boundary-pushing approach to horror. For those brave enough to endure it, Tusk offers a singular experience, equal parts absurd, horrifying, and tragically inhumane. Thanks for watching. Tusk is one of those films that you never forget. I'd recommend watching it by yourself first to really endure the abomination of insanity that takes place here. That's what I did, and I felt I really got the full experience. This is really one of those movies that makes you question if there are in fact worse fates than death, especially when under the circumstances you wish you were dead. Anyway, I hope you have a blessed day.